I'm pretty glad that my analysis of the final provisions of the AI Act in terms of regulating deepfakes was published in July, and that would be probably one of the point of references when it comes to assessing what might be the shortcomings of the AI Act in terms of regulating deepfakes and what might be the strong sides of these provisions. So that would also be the follow-up to what we published in Applied Cybersecurity and Internet Governance in October. The AI Act, the Artificial Intelligence Act from the European Union, is the first regulation that holistically deals with regulating deepfakes. Deepfakes do not have any agreed-upon definition, so we might search for the definition in the AI Act. That would be the first legal description of the definition that might be a role model for the different jurisdictions around the world in future. Sometimes we speak about the Brussels effect, which means that the provisions which are adopted by the European Union are exported to different jurisdictions. When it comes to the Artificial Intelligence Act, that might be the same way. Regulating deepfakes would show us if the provisions are effective, if there are any visible shortcomings, and if these provisions might be used for future purposes to build the safeguards against different misuses and abuses of the technology, particularly when it comes to deepfakes. The definition of deepfakes contained in the Artificial Intelligence Act comprises 4 different aspects. The first aspect, the technological one, shows us that deepfakes should be content that is created, generated, or manipulated with the use of artificial intelligence. So that is the first aspect. There is the second aspect, typological one, which refers to the form of the content when it comes to the technological structure. Deepfakes are audio content, video content, or images, which means basically audio or visual content. The third aspect refers to subjects and objects which are depicted by deepfakes. I'm pretty glad that the European Union decided to broaden that subjective aspect because it comprises right now not only persons which are stereotypically associated with the use of deepfakes, but also objects, events, or entities. The fourth aspect is a very important one in terms of assessing the epistemic value of the content that is generated or manipulated by the artificial intelligence. It means that that is the affectual aspect. It means that we as recipients, we have to be deceived or manipulated by the content. So we believe that what we perceive is authentic or truthful. So these are 4 basic aspects. The definition leads us to the very important provisions which are contained in the Artificial Intelligence Act. Basically, the provisions on transparency, regulations, and obligations for the providers and deployers of the AI systems. That is basically Article 50 in the Artificial Intelligence Act. I would refer in that particular aspect to what Sam Gregory from Witness Organization called different levels of disclaimers or disclosure rules for artificial intelligence in terms of deepfakes. The first level of protection, the first level of safeguards, refers to the obligations on the side of providers of the AI systems. So deepfakes, the use of artificial intelligence should be disclosed in a machine-readable format, which means that we as humans, we cannot perceive it, we cannot see it. That is why it's indirect, but machines can read it. And we can just set a couple of examples how it might look like. For example, the watermarks or content provenance or the authentication of the content or the metadata that might be cryptographically signed. Then the machines which would be scanning the content would recognize that the content was produced with the use of AI. The second level should be done in a human-readable way, which means that we, as recipients, we would be able to distinguish that something was produced by the artificial intelligence. How it might look like? Probably it would be based on different forms of disclaimers, and such disclaimers we can already see added to the content that is distributed among social media. For example, the disclaimer that something was produced with the use of AI. Very generic one, and we will see if it would be effective, because after some time we might get used to these disclaimers, and we as human recipients, we might be not perceiving these disclaimers anymore, not taking care if something was produced or generated with the use of artificial intelligence. So the effectiveness of these disclosure rules would be tested in future. In that particular aspect, we would be the first ones to test such solutions, and would probably be a role model for different other jurisdictions that would be looking really closely what goes wrong in the European Union in our system of safeguards against deepfakes and their manipulative potential. The transparency obligations which are introduced by the AI Act will not prevent the actors of disinformation from using deepfakes against us, against our democratic societies. So we have to remember, and we have to be quite realistic, that we cannot fight disinformation with the specific provisions. Introducing the legal measures in the AI Act is only one line of the deepfakes. We need more synergies when it comes to the different EU legal acts, especially with the Digital Services Act, that forces the digital platforms to mitigate the risks stemming from the appearance of the deepfakes in the information space. And we also need strengthening our social awareness, our social resilience when it comes to the responding to the threats stemming from the dissemination of deepfakes. After all, we are the ones that can respond to these risks and to these problems.